Hello everyone, Jennifer L. Scott here, and welcome to the Daily Connoisseur. I have such a treat for you today. I have my dear friend Dr. Chloe Carmichael on the channel to talk to us about how we can regulate our nervous systems. So Dr. Chloe is a clinical psychologist, and she is also the author of Nervous Energy: Harness the Power of Your Anxiety. This conversation will change your life because it has changed mine. I learned so much from speaking to her about this very important topic. Today's video is also sponsored by Babbel, so you will hear about them later on. But without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Dr. Chloe, welcome back to the channel. It's so amazing to have you here again.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's so good to be with you.
For those of you who don't know Dr. Chloe, she's a clinical psychologist and author of Nervous Energy. This book is so amazing. And she's also a dear friend of mine and my pen pal. We are pen pals. The lag time between writing to each other sometimes, is a little long, but we're busy moms and how it is. But it's just wonderful to know somebody so accomplished, and now she can share her insights with our audience today. So,
Thank you, Jennifer. It really is. It's so great to share with you because as a clinical psychologist, it's been so interesting to me about your work
mhm.
because this focus on teaching people about elegance and about carefully curating and designing the environment around them and thinking about the way that they relate to others, it does make life more beautiful.
It
And it
does.
also, I believe, it regulates our stress and it gives us a sense of control and it gives us a way to express ourselves. And all of these things are also so good for our mental health.
Absolutely. So, in our last chat, we talked about nervous energy, and her book really, I love it. It's like alchemy in a way. It's transmuting your nervous energy and really just harnessing that power to make it work for you. But today we're going to talk more about the nervous system. This is a subject I've been personally looking into a lot, so I can't wait to get your insights on it. And so, can you just explain to us, from a clinical psychologist perspective, what is the nervous system?
Wow. Yes. I mean, the nervous system it's the brain,
Mm-hmm.
it's the spinal cord,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all of the nerves.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's really it's kind of like the hard wiring in a
Mm-hmm.
way of our bodies, and not only of our brain, but also, again, the nerves and the spinal cord, those are controlling everything from, our sensory input, but even our digestive system, right? Even that involves muscles that have to be, used and moved by the brain. So it's almost hard to overstate the depth of the nervous system.
Absolutely. And it's funny because there's a physical component to it because it's the spine, it's the brain, but there's also the emotional component to it as well. And when people talk about regulating the nervous system, what does that mean?
Yeah, so it's a really great question because we can regulate our nervous system. Or in a certain way as well, our nervous system can regulate us,
Hmm.
right? So for example, if you're under a lot of stress and then your body starts to get really achy and reactive and you've got headaches and everything, your nervous system is kind of going a little bit haywire and is actually in a healthy sense, to a certain degree, sidelining you and
Mm.
pulling you off what you're doing and saying it's time to spend a day in bed, right? Now, on the other hand, as you said, we can govern our nervous system. We can regulate it as well by saying, I'm going to spend 5 minutes a day doing some progressive muscle relaxation or interestingly enough, singing has been shown
Mm.
to stimulate the vagus nerve and to regulate us, so that's probably one reason why the choir always looks so joyful, right? If you
Mm.
see choirs. So it can be a bottom up or a top down, meaning, we can allow our nervous system to just, kind of go through life unfiltered, and then we can deal with whatever the results are. Or we can be intentional about the way that we regulate that we make sure that we get our sleep, that we think about our diet and all the other
Hmm.
things that we can do to have a top-down intentional effect upon our nervous system.
What I love so much about your work is that you flip things on their side. So I feel like people traditionally might think, oh, I have a headache, I'm stressed, I have shoulder tension. That's bad, you know? And but I love that you look at that and think, no, this is actually your body just telling you as a warning symbol that you need to stop, you need to slow down because that's what I love because I feel like nothing is wrong or bad necessarily with regard to this stuff. It's just like how you look at it. So, in the past, I think when I would have these symptoms of stress, I would maybe take a Tylenol and push through, or you know what I mean? Because I think, oh, this is bad. But I love, listening to the body and using that as a sign to just change course and slow down. And so it's like when those things come up, instead of panicking, we can actually harness that power and think, okay, I'm going to work with this. It's just a very natural way to be, it seems.
Yeah, that's so true. We can definitely, we don't want to get, say, anxiety about anxiety. So with
Right.
nervous energy, the idea is that the healthy function of that anxiety is to stimulate preparation behaviors.
Mm,
And again, in a similar sense, as you just mentioned as well, if we're having a headache, or, if we're feeling, lackluster, many of us do have a tendency to say, well, gee, I could take a Tylenol and keep pushing. And sometimes we have to do that,
right.
but we don't want to totally sweep the information under the rug. We
Hmm.
also want to be reflective and say, okay, well, maybe I also need to at least clear my schedule for Saturday and make
Hmm.
sure that on Saturday I will have some time, to decompress. Or another, with the nervous system, another way to think about that is also to, when you have that headache, or, you're feeling drained, to say, what has been going on that's made me feel this way? Like, have I been
Yes.
around, okay, just, I love my mother-in-law, love her, okay, but
Hmm.
just the proverbial example
Right.
is, oh, have I been around my mother-in-law?
Hmm.
And so when you can even start to notice what trips up your nervous system,
Hmm.
then you can become strategic about it. So that doesn't mean that we can not put ourselves in stressful situations. We don't have the opportunity to just opt out of certain things. And if we do, we should consider
Hmm.
doing it sometimes. But if there's something coming up that we know is going to stress us out, we can forecast that and then plan ahead with a good self-care plan. So again, just with the example of, the proverbial mother-in-law, suppose that I didn't have the wonderful mother-in-law I do, and that I was going to have to go spend a weekend, with some, irritating mother-in-law. What I would do is I would plan a massage either to occur at some point during the trip, to just say,
Hmm.
like, hey, everybody, it's my little moment to get away from my massage or my nature walk or whatever.
Hmm.
Or I could plan ahead and say, well, we're getting back on Sunday night. I'm going to plan some relaxing thing for myself on Monday, so that you have that self-care plan. It's another technique from my book. It's called the to-do list with emotions, where we look at what's on our list, what's on our agenda, what's coming up. Do we
Hmm.
notice it's going to trigger any stress? And then how can we layer in a
Hmm.
self-care plan to be responsive to this, weather that we know is coming?
That is so good. I mean, and I think just, a lot of us are planners, especially on my channel, we love planning content and planning our day, but looking a bit deeper into the schedule and knowing, I've realized about myself that if I have more than one major thing a day, I get incredibly stressed out, and it's just how I am. I have accepted it, you know. So it's like if the kids have a dentist appointment and then I have like something to volunteer with later and then I have a work deadline, it's going to be very stressful for me. So it's
Hmm.
funny you say this because yesterday, but the day before we're filming this, was such a stressful day for me. It was an out of the ordinary day, several appointments, lots of driving back and forth. By the end of the day, I was so stressed out and I could feel the tension all over my body. And I planned a massage for today. So later on today, I'm getting a massage. And it's like it's so important to address this because I was down with pneumonia over Christmas. And it was one of those things where I was forced into resting. So it was like you're saying, if you don't listen to the cues of you need to rest, you need to do this and that, eventually you will be forced to rest, is my experience. And leading up to it, I was just not feeling well for like a week and I wanted to get in a massage. Massage really works for me, you know, and I never did it. And so I just kept powering through and then I just broke and got sick. Now, I don't know if any of that's scientifically true, like, but all I know is I was not allowing myself to rest, and that probably made everything worse. So, listening to your body, knowing yourself, like know thyself. If you can't handle this, like a certain situation or a certain, for me, it's like multiple appointments, lots of driving. I know that that's going to just send me, you know, into a stress mode. And incorporating self-care in our plan is such a wonderful idea. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's great on two levels. It's kind of a two-pronged thing
Hmm.
because you not only get the obvious practical benefit of the stress relief that you have strategically planted into your schedule at the opportune time, but you also get the feeling of control and self-care
Mm.
of just knowing that you planned that ahead for yourself, right? It gives you that, for example, when people book a vacation, studies have shown that their stress levels actually decrease the moment that they purchase the tickets and plan
Mm.
the trip, even though they haven't gone on it yet,
Mm.
just because they know it's there. In the same way that we get what psychologists call anticipatory anxiety, where you know
Mm.
something, oh, I've got that dentist appointment, it's going to be
Yeah.
hard. You're anticipating it and you're anxious. We can also have, anticipatory relief that we know there's a light at
Mm.
the end of the tunnel and we know we did that for ourselves. So it feels good on
Hmm.
both levels.
I love that.
I hope you're enjoying my chat with Dr. Chloe Carmichael. I'd like to take a minute to thank Babbel, who have kindly sponsored today's video. So Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world. Their intuitive lessons help you learn a language through real-life conversations. I choose Babbel because I love the design of the app. They make learning a language so fun. I like to brush up on my French with Babbel. The lessons are designed by real language teachers. Babbel teaches real-world conversations and lessons that prepare you to have practical conversations about travel, business, relationships, and more. Babbel is scientifically proven to help you start speaking a new language in 3 weeks. They also offer a 20-day money-back guarantee. So here's an example of me doing a sample lesson with Babbel.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais dans la vie?
Qu'est-ce que tu fais dans la vie?
Je suis étudiant.
Je suis étudiant. So click my link below or scan the QR code to get 60% off your subscription with Babbel. Thank you to Babbel for sponsoring this video, and now back to my chat with Dr. Chloe Carmichael.
So I wanted to ask you about a lot of us have heard about fight or flight, fawn and freeze, these reactions that we have to stressful situations. And how does that relate to the nervous system? Is that the nervous system's response to certain things? Can we talk about those four things and then how we can deal with them when they arise?
Yeah. So fight or flight is the sympathetic nervous system, right?
Hmm.
So, the classic is like you see a rattlesnake.
Hmm.
The sympathetic nervous system will give you a huge big shot of adrenaline, and limit your focus on anything else so that you can just focus on fight or flight. Now, the freeze is a really interesting one, and we'll get to the fawn as
Mm-hmm.
well. But the freeze is actually coming from the parasympathetic system. So
Mm.
just to give people just a really quick primer, the sympathetic nervous system relates to the fight or flight. And then the parasympathetic is what we call rest and digest, right? Like it's
Okay.
the one that's just kind of about slowing down. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
we need both. So the freeze is like that parasympathetic nervous
Mm.
system because there are certain times where we cannot fight or flight. Like again, I love my mother-in-law, but just as I don't know why I keep going to this example, but suppose that you have this, difficult person in your life
Mm-hmm.
and they're making these barbs at you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the on one level, you you would want to do fight or flight. But what if for some situation, for some reason, you cannot, right?
Mm-hmm.
You cannot just leave, and you know that engaging with this person is only going to make things, worse on some
Mm-hmm.
level. So the freeze is actually kind of like the evolutionary connection to playing dead, right? Like, so playing possum, right? Just becoming kind of
Oh,
inert, kind of
yeah.
inactive, just non-responsive, just
Mm.
totally shutting down. And sometimes that's actually the most productive thing that we can do is to become non-responsive and non-reactive and just kind of put up a big wall
Mm.
and go inside of ourselves. Sometimes that's the best thing to do. Now, the fawn one is really interesting too, which is where we actually become kind of obsequious to the other
Mm.
person, right? Like we start, giving them a lot of flattery, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
compliments, a lot of attention. We start, really turning on the charm. And there's no one right response, right? It's not always correct to fight. It's not always correct to run away. Not always correct to freeze, and it's not always correct to fawn. But it is good to know that these are the four, basic ways that we have to deal with stress, and they all have their appropriate time and place.
So again, my mind is kind of being blown because I had traditionally looked at fight, flight, fawn, and freeze as being negative reactions to stress. But I guess some reaction has to take place basically. So you're saying that it is natural to go into these reactions. Like if you saw a rattlesnake, of course it's natural to have the flight response. But so the question is, what if we're stuck in one of these spaces? Like, I think that's the issue there with me, for example. I suffer from people pleasing. And I find that fawn is very much so in line with that. So when I'm stressed, it has a lot to do with being a people pleaser. I'm fawning over things. I don't really want to do them. And so how do you get out of a cycle where you're stuck in those responses?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So when you say that, it makes me think of that saying, if your only tool is the hammer, all of your problems look like nails, right?
Mm,
So if we notice that we're over relying on one thing, and for some people it's fight, right? Like no matter
yeah.
what comes up, they're ready to
Yeah.
ready to tangle, right? And for some people who are very avoidant, they always just, run away from
Hmm.
things or whatever. So there is a time and a place for everything. And so, yeah, I mean, if a person notices that that they're over relying on one particular thing, the awareness in and of itself right there is
Hmm.
actually really key.
Mm,
So the first thing I would do is to congratulate yourself on the awareness of saying, okay,
yeah.
I think I'm over relying on this, one technique. And
Mm,
then when you're in a stressful situation, to even just ask yourself, what would a fight response look like here? What
mm,
what what would that look like? So for example, if your boss is really pushing you
hmm.
on a deadline and it just doesn't feel manageable, for some people, again, they'll become very avoidant and they just
Hmm.
obviously it doesn't help. But fighting doesn't always have to be aggressive either. So fighting can also be, well, I can make a list of all the things that my boss has told me as are a priority, and I can really say to him, I want to have a meeting with you or with her and review what these are and ask that boss to tell me, which pieces really are the most important because I can only get two of them done by next Tuesday. Which
Mm.
should they be, right? And again, even fawn has its role there as well to be able to
Mm-hmm.
think about, we don't even have to just do one of those responses. We can even do multiple. We could
Yeah.
do a fawny fight. Like that can actually be really sometimes very effective, like
Okay.
catching more flies with honey than with vinegar, that whole thing. But there's a strategy behind it.
I see. So we're kind of using these more as tools, and it's good to just be aware of, and maybe consider the repercussions from whichever one that we choose. Now, is there a baseline where we're not in any of these states?
I mean, I guess you could say that. I mean, I think on some level, we're always thinking about, what are our goals and what are our obstacles and how are we going to manage them.
Hmm.
But I mean, I guess that's kind of getting into the next part of your some of the questions that you had about what about just really going into downtime where we're not
Hmm.
engaged with any struggle or with
Yes.
any obstacle, and we're just purely doing some rejuvenation, which is
Hmm.
great too.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk about that. What are your suggestions and tips for how we can get into that in our very busy lives?
Yeah, and busy, of course, is the key word.
Hmm.
So, we carving out some time, just intentionally, even saying, even if it's only 10 minutes a day that you're going to spend, can actually really do wonders. So I mentioned before that actually singing has a really, it activates the vagus nerve. And the
Hmm.
vagus nerve is really a key part of that parasympathetic
Ah,
nervous system, that rest
okay.
and digest part. So people always joke about singing in the shower or that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But if anybody out there likes to do that, just know that you're actually really doing something positive for yourself. Spending time in nature has also
Hmm.
been shown to really help to let us calm down, let our nervous system rebalance itself.
Yeah,
Also, sleep is key.
right.
Whether it be the sympathetic or the parasympathetic nervous system. I know with parasympathetic, we do think of it as rest and digest, but you have to remember if we don't get that chance to rest, the
Hmm.
sympathetic nervous system is essentially going to be trying to push on the gas, but there's nothing left in the tank, right? So both systems serve each other.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think people are becoming more aware of how important sleep is. I went through like a decade of not having sleep just because I also had little kids too. And so it was constantly being interrupted. But now I guard my sleep so much. I'm going to bed earlier. I'm just doing so many things to make sure that I get good sleep because I see the importance of it.
That's so good,
Yeah.
and I feel like people almost need permission to
Right.
do that. So, if anybody feels that they need permission, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I can tell you that sleep is the foundation of mental health. So, if it's helpful, and I mean this, somewhat facetiously, but you can think of sleep as your medicine, right? So,
Hmm.
if somebody understood that sleep actually has a medical purpose. It's when
Mm.
your body repairs its tissue and its joints. It's when your brain, if anybody is into computers, I think of sleep as like defragmenting the hard drive that is your brain, right? Like that's
Mm.
actually when your brain, processes and organizes and fits in all the bits of information that you've been cruising throughout your day. So
Hmm.
it's almost hard to overstate the importance of sleep.
Yes. And do you have any, quick tips on how everyone can improve their sleep from what you're noticing with your clients?
Yeah. So Okay, so sleep, again, as we said, is part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. And when we think about breathing,
Mm.
inhaling is part of the sympathetic nervous system. That's oftentimes why, like when you have a threat, we take a deep
Mm-hmm.
breath, right?
Mm.
But exhaling is part of the parasympathetic
Mm.
nervous system. So when you're thinking about getting ready, for sleep and kind of priming your body, and maybe you need to press the reset button on your body so that you can actually get into sleep because you feel so tense, right? One of the things that you can do is to take a breath in and then just deliberately make sure that you say count to 6 as you exhale so that you're
Okay.
just very, 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 very slowly doing the
Mm.
exhale. And that in and of itself will actually start to activate the parasympathetic rest and digest part of your nervous system. I've also, I think, shared with people before here about the cocoon breath, but I'll just run through it again really
Yes,
quickly
I
because
love
I
it.
think it's so helpful for sleep.
Yeah.
So what I think of the cocoon breath is like drawing down a curtain at the end of a long day.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you do is you take a breath in and then you exhale. As you exhale, you let your eyelids drop closed
Mm-hmm.
and then keep them closed as you inhale again. But on your next exhalation, just imagine them dropping closed from the
Mm.
inside. And then with each exhalation after that, repeating again that sense of imagining your eyes closing and imagining like a curtain drawing down
Mm.
around you at the end of a day. And with each exhalation, again, even feeling the weight of your body supported by your bed or your chair, or with each
Mm-hmm.
exhalation, feeling your shoulder blades start to relax, or even your tongue and your jaw, just linking together your exhalations with relaxation. Also, progressive muscle relaxation. If people
Mm.
haven't done that before, where you deliberately clench each part of your body
Mm-hmm.
one by one, and then just with your exhalation, letting it relax.
Release.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What I
that's
also
so
like
good.
to do is I take my smart home device. I don't want to say the name of it or I'll get
Mm-hmm.
activated, but I actually have it programmed, and you can do this to
Wow.
say your name because people are responsive to their own names. So mine will say at, say, like 9 p.m. every night, it will say, Chloe, time for bed. Your sleep is
Ah,
important. And then it will put on relaxing nature sounds. And so
wow.
there's something about having it say my name and tell me it's time for bed and that my sleep is important, and then putting on that relaxing nature music when you can start getting your environment to cue you. So if you can also get your environment like a smart home device set up where your bedroom will go into soft lighting at
Mm-hmm.
7 p.m. It starts to, again, as you said, regulate the nervous system by
Yeah.
you're governing it yourself, but you're
Yes.
you're doing it on a routine so that you don't have to, in your stressed out state, say, oh, it's time now for me to also start putting on relaxing music
Right.
when
Like
you
one
can
more
make your
thing to do.
environment do it. Exactly.
I love that. That's so good. I like the idea of taking charge of all of this instead of feeling helpless, like, oh, here I go again in fight or flight because I'm stressed. And you know what I mean? That kind of helplessness that we tend to have because we don't have the tools to cope with any of this. But what I love about this is that really it's just about becoming aware, slowing down and becoming aware of what's happening, checking in with your body, how you're feeling, adjusting things as necessary, and not being so hard on ourselves for it. And that's just been my biggest takeaway from the conversation so far is that it's not bad. None of this is bad. It's like we can harness it to make it good.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
None of it is bad. I mean, you know, when we think about stress in and of itself, it actually oftentimes just means that we're growing. So, like if you're at the gym and you're lifting weights, it's not until your muscles are shaking that
Hmm.
you know that you're actually really getting good muscle growth, right?
Hmm.
But the key is that you have to plan that after the workout, you're going to have that protein shake, you're going
Yeah.
to have that massage or whatever. But to understand that the stress in and of itself is actually part of a healthy, growing engagement with life. And to understand, yeah, sometimes it's good to fight, to lean into what's going on. And sometimes it is
Mm-hmm.
good to take flight, to say, you know what,
Mm-hmm.
this party, this friend group is really great, but what I need is a rest, is just an
Mm-hmm.
early bedtime, and that's all good too. But speaking of parties, that reminds me of one other, just thing I wanted to share,
Mm-hmm.
which is that being with supportive friends and family,
Mm-hmm.
that also has a very positive effect on the nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
because human beings, we are somewhat tribal animals. We're not
Mm-hmm.
meant to be alone. And so many of us really take refuge just by being with friends and family and
Mm-hmm.
sharing the burden with others, even if they don't have a solution, just knowing
Mm-hmm.
that we're not alone. That's why like laughter and
Oh
things,
yeah.
they can be such big stress relievers and really help our nervous system to just settle down.
Yes, and it's so true. I mean, even a text from a friend can cheer you up. You know what I mean? And it's so important to reach out to your friends too. I know a lot of adults can feel isolated and kind of just stuck in the grind and feel like they're losing their friendships a little bit at this point in life. So I think that that's so good to just surround yourself with those friends and family members.
You are so right about that, Jennifer. And
Yeah.
as people probably know, the Surgeon General has said that we are in an epidemic of
Yes,
loneliness.
I've read that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is really hard on the nervous system, right? It,
Mm-hmm.
it, it can become a circular problem because the more stressed out and lonesome we get, the harder and weirder it can even feel to like reach out to people.
Mm-hmm.
So what I also suggest is that people keep a call list. So
Ah.
if you keep in your phone a list of, say, the list can be as long as you want, there's no limit, all of the friends and family and everybody that you keep meaning to kind of call, but you feel like you don't have time because you're so busy or whatever, just put their names in that list and build the list
Mm.
as life goes on. And then when you have that healthy longing, which some people call loneliness, but again,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually a healthy
Mm.
signal. It's like when your tummy
Yeah.
rumbles, that means the good news is that you've got a good appetite, that you have a
Right.
healthy desire for food. And so if people feel lonely, the good news is that that signifies that you have a healthy craving for human interaction. It's so
Mm.
much better than being, you know, not interested in people at all,
Right.
right? So if you have those moments of loneliness where you suddenly feel like a gulp of social activity, good news is that you've, kind of done the legwork for yourself by this little call list, and then you just cycle through the list. And I love to do a triple whammy on this. So what I'll do is I'll go for a walk in nature and do cell phone catch-up calls with friends. So then you're
Mm.
getting exercise, which is
Mm-hmm.
good for your nervous system. You're being in nature, which is good for your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
You're having a phone call with a friend. It's so good for you and it feels so good and it's so easy. And even if you don't reach the people, they see that you called, and so it keeps that connection alive.
Right.
Or even if you just send a quick text, it gives you that
Mm-hmm.
feeling of connection.
I love that. Do you have any more tips for, I mean, we've discussed sleep and going on a walk, being out in nature, just any more small things people can do. I've heard about something called a dopamine menu that I was kind of looking into where people write down, um, little tiny things that make them happy that they could just select off of a list. And I can't remember who created this, but I'll put her name on the screen so that she gets credit for it. But, um, what about things like that? What do you think about adding little treats like that in throughout the day?
Oh, for sure. A few
Yeah.
things. So I don't know who created the dopamine menu, but there is something. It's called something like the adult schedule of pleasant events. And
That sounds
it
so
was,
nice.
yes, it was,
That
it
sounds
was,
like an Alexander McCall Smith book, actually.
yes. It was created by a woman named Marsha Linehan,
Okay.
and Marsha Linehan is the creator of dialectical behavioral therapy.
Oh.
And the adult schedule of pleasant events, people can Google it and it's out there. And it has like 100 things, that feel good, just feel good activities, again, whether it be, going for a walk or calling a friend, or for some people it's, tidying a room, or, brushing their hair, or, just all these different things that it has on the list. So certainly keeping that, list of pleasant events that you can have available for yourself. Another thing that can be helpful too, of course, is to just take a tech break.
Yes.
To put down the phone and, go through some of those breathing exercises. Also, when I think thought replacements can be really helpful. So
Mm.
when you find yourself, just being in an anxious monologue, say like being frantic about
Mm-hmm.
time, there's a woman named Kate Northrup.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I know
her
her.
mom, that book, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom.
Yes.
And so Kate Northrup has gone on to write many good books. And so she has this incredible thing that she says when she's feeling stressed about time, which is, I am the source of time. Which
Ooh.
I love it, because if you think about it in a certain way, it's actually true. Like, we do decide to some level, how we will spend our time. Um, and I just thought that was really powerful.
I
But
am the source of
other,
time. I love that.
yes. Another thing, that people can think about is even just simply like, I'm safe and I'm
Mm-hmm.
growing, or,
Mm-hmm.
stress is a part of growth, or,
Mm.
this stress is reminding me to schedule some downtime, and then to just go ahead and open up your calendar and do that. And certainly, again, to remember that exhaling will help to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest part. And I think of that rest and digest like it's referring to food about
Right.
digest. But what I think it also is, I think is to digest what we've been through that day, right? To just
Yes.
kind of like stop and process. And so that exhalation,
Yes.
being in a hot bath. I mean, so interestingly, though, they say being in very, very, very cold actually stimulates the vagus nerve, but
Mm.
every body is different.
Yeah.
And there's no way that I'm ever going to view exposure to
Right.
cold as anything positive.
Same.
But like a super hot shower for me,
Yeah.
if I'm just having a day or having a moment even, getting
Mm-hmm.
into just like a really nice hot shower, or if you have essential oils that you can just keep in your purse and give yourself a little relaxer. I find as well that there's a novelty effect, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people feel almost like guilty. They're like, oh, yeah, I get into these things, and like this week it's this that relaxes me, and then the next week it's the other thing. And they think it means that they're doing it wrong. Whereas
Mm.
actually, for some people, it's the novelty that helps, because we can habituate to a stimulation, right? So if there's
Mm.
like always a certain sound in the background, after a certain point, your brain might just tune it out and realize that it's not, bringing you any critical information.
Okay.
And so the same thing can sometimes happen for relaxing
Mm.
processes or stimuli. Now, we may have tried and true that always
Mm-hmm.
relax us. That's great. We don't need to rotate them.
Right.
But if you kind of find that you want to rotate in something new and maybe have even different scents, that you have different scent of the week or whatever, that
Mm.
can be really helpful too.
That's so interesting. Yes, my tried and true is definitely a hot bath at the end of the day. Oh my goodness. And I'm the same way. I cannot do cold plunges. It's just no. But it's funny you say that because I've been researching Ayurveda recently, and they say there's different doshas, and I've determined that I have Vata dosha dominance, which we don't like cold things. So like it's like recommended that we eat warmer foods, hotter foods, and that's probably why some people can tolerate cold baths, cold plunges, and others literally can't. So I think I'm just one of those people. You probably are too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But all this talk about with doshas, they also talk about, as you said, with food. And that
Hmm.
reminds me of just another thing that people can do sometimes that I think can be helpful is a super hot cup of tea can
Mm.
be nice, because it gets you on a variety of sensory levels. So it has a nice scent, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's putting something nice and hot and relaxing, into your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this, tactile awareness of it. So it cues you on multiple levels. And also, Jennifer, you have such great videos about cooking and table setting and all of those
Mm-hmm.
things. So again, with the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, we eat better, we feel
Yes.
better, and our bodies take in the food better, and we socialize better. We linger over the table
Mm-hmm.
more. And so cooking again, and if people like to cook, can be one of those just multi-sensory
Mm-hmm.
experiences that takes you into the moment, and then you're anticipating this meal that you're going to relax and enjoy with your family. And for people who don't like to cook, think about planning a beautiful dinner out at a great restaurant with somebody that you love.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I think the atmosphere when you are dining is so important. And I always say to my kids, I can't have a circus around me while I'm dining. I can't have the TV on. I can't have people jumping around. And so it's like we really focus on having a peaceful environment when we are dining. And otherwise I can't do it. I think digesting and when, the process of eating and then digesting has to be so peaceful. Otherwise, I do feel like upset. So I think that elegance really does play a hand in there. And there's a reason why people for so long have sat down for a meal rather than walking, running around and eating while you're walking. And, it's just not conscious behavior. So I totally see that.
Yeah, for sure. As well as taking that little walk after dinner.
Yes.
There's so many
Mm-hmm.
of these, kind of classic,
Mm-hmm.
elegant, features of life that actually are also, we learn, as the years go on through science, are so good for us. And,
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned, oh my goodness, like not having a circus around you, or the TV on at dinner. Um, For the love of God, please, everybody, don't have your cell phone like while
Mm-hmm.
you're having dinner with
Mm-hmm.
your family or with your loved ones. I'm a real stickler for that, at the dinner table because social support is so important for our mental health. It's so
Mm-hmm.
important for our nervous system. It gives us that feeling of togetherness. Like actually, even hugs are really
Mm-hmm.
good for your parasympathetic nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why massage helps people,
Mm-hmm.
is the sense of a positive, friendly touch. And then, of course, there's acupressure points and whatnot that
Mm-hmm.
can really get at it even deeper. But the mere fact of skin to skin contact, or
Mm-hmm.
even, being fully clothed, just having a hug with
Mm-hmm.
somebody, or just simply sitting at a dinner at a round dinner table or just around the table together and feeling a sense of closeness and connection, it does regulate us. So,
Mm-hmm.
people sometimes feel like, oh, well, that's just indulgent. Think of it as healthcare. It's good for you.
Oh, absolutely. And this is just a public service announcement to everybody who's so go, 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 go all the time, going from one thing to another, eating on the run, eating in the car, not stopping. We really have to put those conscious breaks in our day, and it's for our greater good ultimately.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Chloe, this was such an insightful conversation. I always walk away from our talks feeling so just inspired and more powerful. Like we have power to change negative things in our life and not necessarily shame ourselves or think we're doing things wrong, but just noticing that when things are going a certain way, that we have the power to stop, to assess, to analyze, and to transmute those things um, into feelings and emotions that work for us. So I appreciate your work so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I tell you, I appreciate yours so much as well. And so does my family, because I've been setting the dinner table much more beautifully since watching your videos.
Oh, I love that. Well, I hope that you all pick up Dr. Chloe's book. It's called Nervous Energy. And Dr. Chloe, can you share where we can all find you on social media and website?
Absolutely, yes. So, in fact, if people are interested in doing a breathing exercise with me, they can go to drchloe.com/breathe. And
Mm.
there's a, just free video there. Also, my books, which Nervous Energy, Harness the Power of Your Anxiety is one. And then I also have a book about dating and
Mm.
relationships from a long time ago for people that are interested in that. And my books are available, wherever books are sold. And
Mhm.
they're also available on audiobook, which
Mm.
I personally love because it gives you something to, if you have a stressful internal monologue that's just defaulting onto like, what am I supposed to do? What's
Mhm.
productive? And you just want to take a break from that. A good thing to do is to put on music or an audiobook or a podcast and just give yourself something else to latch onto.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us here, and I hope that you'll be back. I have so much that I'd love to talk to you about, and we'll leave all of your information down below so people can find you. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Jennifer. The pleasure's mine. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Dr. Chloe. I know that I learned so much from this, and I can't wait to read your comments down below. Also, thank you to Babbel for sponsoring. Click my link in the description or scan the QR code to get 60% off your Babbel subscription. Thank you so much for joining us today. Keep calm and remain classy, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.